Hey guys, this is Fancy Man, and this is going to be a continuation of my World of Warcraft video from the other day, where I took on the Mage Tower challenge for Fury Warriors, where you fight Agatha. I wanted to go a bit more in depth on the gear and strategies I used that helped me beat this fight. So, starting off, this is during 7.3, we're on Argus now, and eye levels are a little bit higher because of the Relinquished Token Vendor, and the Netherlight Crucible is active, which gives you some powerful bonuses to your artifact. At the time, my weapons were at 63 traits, which gave my Concordance to Legionfall about 6,700 additional strength on its procs, which is a big boost to DPS. Secondly, I had two legendaries, which were a big help during the fight. I had Kazalak's Fugiato's Fury, which is the legendary cloak that gives your Bloodthirst a stacking damage and healing buff up to 4%. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but Bloodthirst is going to be your main source of healing during this fight, and that extra 4% can really save your life. Next, I had Safuz's Secret, the legendary ring, which gives you a powerful haste and movement speed buff whenever you use a crowd control or interrupt effect, which also is going to happen a lot during this fight. For my talents, I switched them off my normal DPS rotation and focused more on AoE and additional movement speed buffs. I had War Machine as my first trait, which whenever you kill a target, you get a 30% haste and movement speed buff for 15 seconds. Now, because this fight is all about ad management, that buff is going to be active for the most of the fight and is extremely helpful in getting from target to target and lowering the global cooldown to make sure you can use more abilities. I then had Shockwave, which is just helpful for crowd control AoE. I had Wrecking Ball, which is a big proc bonus damage to my Whirlwind. I also had Furious Charge at level 60, which gave a huge boost to my Bloodthirst healing after I use a charge. That is extremely helpful for sustain, so you don't have to rely on enrage regeneration. The rest were pretty standard for my normal rotation. I had Frothing Berserker, which gives you a damage and movement speed buff whenever you hit 100 rage. Inner Rage, which removes the requirement for Enrage when you use Raging Blow and gives it a huge damage boost, which is helpful when you want to get through one of Agatha's main damage shields. Lastly, I had Reckless Abandon, which increases the uptime of Battlecry by 2 seconds and makes it automatically generate 100 rage, which gives you the Frothing Berserker buff. So they work really well together. Now, those are just suggestions for what I used, but you want to focus on legendaries and talents that they complement your weak spots pretty much. So whether that be sustain, AoE, or rage generation, that's what you want to focus on. So feel free to mix and match and do whatever you think would best. So let's talk about going into the fight and the mechanics that go into that. So going into this, you're going to talk to her, teleport in, and the things I used that were giving me small buffs were, I had my Flask of the Countless Armies, which gives me a 1300 strength bonus, just extra DPS for easy stuff. The food buff I was using was actually Bear Tartar, which increases my movement speed whenever I kill a target. I know a lot of my talents were handling that, but I wanted to make sure that if things got spread out or if things got hectic, I could quickly move between the different targets and make sure I stayed on top of everything. I also had Defiled Augment Runes, which is another strength buff, and as well as the Potion of the Old War. I only used that once during the fight, rather than starting with it and then using it later again. But if you're worried about burst phases or anything like that, I would highly suggest going out and buying a couple just to make sure you're meeting those thresholds that you're worried about. Now, when I start the fight, as you'll see here, once she's done talking, I charge in and I wait just a second before I use my battle cry and use my Odin's Fury and my AoE abilities, because I want to make sure that those Scorching Imps spawn. You want to take them out immediately so they don't do any unnecessary damage. Do as much damage as you can before Agatha's Vengeance happens. When that summons, she starts 2 imps across the room that start walking towards her. When they reach her, they channel to her and deal a stacking buff that increases her damage over time. This channels extremely slowly. It takes about 10 seconds for her to get 1 stack from either of the beams. They can be interrupted, they can be slowed, they can be stunned. You use any sort of CC, just make sure she doesn't get too many stacks, because it will make it overwhelming to deal with her damage. Over the fight, she shoots out little shadow bolts. You'll see the marker on the ground, just avoid it. Very simple. Now her biggest phase is this, Dark Fury. She puts a shield on her that absorbs all damage and stops interrupt effects and starts channeling an ability that's going to hit you no matter what. Every time that ability is cast, it deals increasing damage. So your biggest thing right there is you want to make sure you get through the shield as quickly as possible. I use Battle Cry and Node's Fury, and then you interrupt it. Make sure you interrupt it because she doesn't stop casting it just because the shield is gone. A short while after she uses Dark Fury, she's going to summon those Umbral Imps. They teleport around the room at various intervals and then start firing Shadow Bolts at you, as well as make her immune to damage. So you need to kill the Imps before you can start focusing on her again. So the biggest idea is just to stay on top of those Imps. The last one is the Fuming Imp, as you can see. She'll summon those randomly during the fight. When they are summoned, they'll start walking towards you. When they reach you, if they stand still for more than a second, then they're going to explode into a Plague Zone. The Plague Zone is going to deal about 600,000 damage to you if you're near it, and it's going to leave one of those pools on the ground. The pool is going to stay there for the rest of the fight. It doesn't go away until she is dead. So if you let those Fuming Imps get out of control, then it can cover the entire floor and you can lose. That's it. There's nothing to do and avoid it. So whenever you see a Fuming Imp, if you have movement speed buffs, if you have slows, if you have fears, use anything to make sure that you're not dropping the pools in inconvenient areas like I did just there. I dropped it directly under her and then on top of where the ads I'm going to have to fight. Now I was able to heal through it, but it's not smart. Avoid that. This is actually a part that didn't work out very well for me. I got really sloppy about the ads, but I was able to clean it up and make sure that I got my health back. So she's going to keep repeating these mechanics throughout the fight, and if you let the ads stack up, like you can see here, there's 3 imps, then multiple mechanics will stack on top of one another. None of the mechanics wait for each other. You know, imp spawns don't wait for each other, the servants don't wait for each other. If you let the Dark Fury go forever, then she's going to kill you because it's going to stack too much extra damage and you'll die straight up. So make sure you're just staying on top of the imp servants especially, and then focus on the Umbral Imps whenever they spawn, as you can see right here. An additional imp that she starts summoning later in the fight, along with those Umbral Imps, is the Smoldering Imp, which you can see on the right side of the screen. He shoots fireballs, and every time he casts one, he gets a buff that increases its damage and his cast speed. So if you don't get to him, he can deal extremely high damage to you because that stacks infinitely. As you can see here, my health gets a little low, and this is when I had to rely on some Enrage regeneration, which increased my Bloodthirst healing by a lot. Save that. Make sure you save that for desperate situations like that. It doesn't matter if you get a little hurt down to 50%. As long as you're staying on top of the mechanics, you can use Bloodthirst and you're charging to make sure that you're getting through everything. Now, once you get her to 50%, like she does here, she's going to teleport to a different area of the cave, and she's going to start dropping these meteors. So make sure you avoid the meteors. They have a pretty big hitbox. They're a lot wider than they actually look, so don't miss it by an inch. Get as far away from it as possible, and don't stand where they're going to fall. If they hit you, you're more than likely going to die. It deals about 3 million damage, and it stuns you for 2 seconds. They also can hit you multiple times if you're on the edge of them. So avoid them at all costs. They're the most dangerous part of this fight, to be honest. After she teleports for the first time, they fall for the rest of the fight. So that's another mechanic that you have to deal with, as well as this Dark Fury shields. Make sure you stay on top of the Dark Furies. Now from this point in the fight, along with those, at certain intervals, she's going to be teleporting to different parts of the cave, like such. She's going to be teleporting between those 2 parts, so from either the entrance of the cave or the back part of the cave. She's never going to go back to the middle. So whenever she teleports to this part of the cave, make sure you face your camera the other direction so you can watch those meteors, because they can sneak up on you. You'll hear them drop, but they don't make much noise while they're actually rolling. The good thing about her teleporting is that she can actually interrupt her own cooldowns with it. If she's close to casting Dark Fury and she teleports, she can interrupt her own Dark Fury and stop those spell casting. It all relies on luck. As well as if she summons those imp servants, they can get interrupted and they can just wander for the rest of the fight, rather than actually channeling their beams. So it's almost counterintuitive that she does it to herself, but it is beneficial for you. As you can see here, she casts a Dark Fury and then shields herself, but she doesn't cast the spell, so I didn't have to worry about catching up to her or anything like that. I just had to worry about getting the shield down. Now at this point in the fight, I was getting a little desperate about trying to get her down, and so I focused a lot more of my damage. Right here you can see I'll pop the Potion of the Old War to try and get extra DPS, and I started ignoring the ads. I would advise against that, but because I'm stupid, that's what I did. So just make sure you stay on top of the imps, because right here when she teleports to the other side, she's going to continue casting her spells. But then she's going to summon all those Umbral imps, and I had forgot that they make her immune to damage while they're alive. So you can see me just wailing on here, and it does absolutely nothing. The biggest bonus about Fury Warriors, and why this fight is actually, I think, better for them, is that they do have extremely powerful AoE. So as you can see here, I'm going to use Battlecry and Odin's Fury just to clean up those imps and then take her down. And that's pretty much it. When she's down, you know, make sure you avoid those last few things just so you don't unnecessarily die. And there you go. Do a nice little cheer. And then you're going to head on back to Dalaran. You're going to turn in the quest to Archmage Modera here. She's going to thank you for saving the world, defeating the Legion, and all that. And then she's going to give you a nice special appearance for your artifact weapons. Puts you in the circle. You get a nice little cinematic here, and it changes your weapons for you. So, congratulations. Few things just to make sure everybody knows. You know, make sure you're covering your weak points with your legendaries and your talents. Focus on things that you're lacking on. All this stuff in here is merely suggestions. Don't let the ads stack on top of each other, because it can make phases intersect and make things extremely difficult to deal with. For example, if the Umbral Imps make her immune while she's shielded and casting Dark Fury, make sure you interrupt Dark Fury. That's the biggest damage dealer in this fight. Avoid those meteors. You know, they have a very large hitbox and they can roll over you multiple times. And just be generally aware of the mechanics that are going on during the fight. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Good luck out there, taking care of all your artifact challenges, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.